July 24th, the dreadful leadership of the Congress invited monster Netanyahu to speak to a joint session of Congress on that Wednesday. Hopefully there'll be a massive demonstration around the Capitol.
I am a Jewish resident of New Britain. Over 38,000 Palestinians have been killed since the start of this genocide.
Do we stand up for human rights or don't we? And the answer to that question, you have to look at the account balance that's in your heart and souls.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. July 24th, the dreadful leadership of the Congress invited monster Netanyahu to speak to a joint session of Congress on that Wednesday. Hopefully there'll be a massive demonstration around the Capitol demanding that genocidal Bibi Netanyahu be arrested and turned over to the ICC. As part of the protest effort, MEC and Promoting Enduring Peace have joined in this petition. We'll have the link on our site and Instagram, or use this QR code to find the petition. A few minutes of video from Democracy Now! Gaza has reached the highest stage of malnutrition, famine.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A panel of UN independent experts has accused Israel of engaging in a campaign of starvation and genocide in Gaza. Michael Fakhri, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, and the other experts write, "We declare that Israel's intentional and targeted starvation campaign against the Palestinian people is a form of genocidal violence and has resulted in famine across all of Gaza." This is Ghanima Joma, a Palestinian mother speaking from Nasser Hospital in Gaza's Khan Yunis, next to her son, Yunus Joma.
My wish is that my child recovers and gets back to how he was before the war.
We're joined right now by Dr. Mustafa Barghouti. He is a Palestinian physician, an activist, a politician who serves as General Secretary of the Palestinian National Initiative. He usually joins us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, but today is joining us from Washington, D.C. Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Dr. Barghouti. If you can start off by responding to that woman who is sitting next to her dying, starving son.
Well, there are no words to describe the feelings of this woman or our feelings when we watch that. But what we see today is a purposeful act of starvation, one form of war crime where Israel is using starvation as an instrument of war. And that's why UNICEF has been warning the last few days that 50,000 children now are at risk of death and at risk of famine because of the starvation policy of the Israeli government. And that is, of course, horrifying. But if you allow me, Amy, I want to alert you to something even more important. I think at this today, we are witnessing probably the most dangerous day in this whole war on Gaza, in this whole aggression on Gaza. The Israeli army is trying to evict hundreds of thousands of people from Gaza City and from northern parts of Gaza in an effort to completely ethnically cleanse Gaza City. And they are threatening people that they would bombard them in every possible way if they don't move.
It's as if invaders demanded the entire population of Cleveland or Pittsburgh get out of their homes, leave the city under pain of death.
Al Jazeera reports Tuesday was the deadliest day in Gaza in weeks. At least 30 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school housing displaced Palestinians near Khan Yunis. Most of the dead were reportedly women and children. It was the fourth Israeli attack on a school over the past 4 days in Gaza. Al Jazeera aired footage showing children playing soccer at the school at the time of the blast.
Palestinians call it the soccer massacre. Journalist Akram al-Satari was interviewed.
Context and the way people were living when they were targeted, you come to a conclusion that people were just not doing anything. They were not engaging in combat activities. They were not carrying arms. They're not fighting. They're just plain people who are seeking some comfort, some rest and respite to their life amidst that ever-escalating military situation, amidst that ever-exacerbating humanitarian crisis. They were trying to play together, I mean the children. They were trying to find some time of peace when their life was targeted and they were ending up dead. And I think also most of them not only dead, but some of them are losing their limbs and end up like physically disabled, some of them losing their sight, which some of the people were reporting about. Some of the children who were injured were losing their eyes and losing their ability to sense things. One of them lost their 4 limbs, a child, a baby boy who lost his 4 limbs. So you can imagine, and I don't think you can ever be able to imagine the level of distress that has been caused.
Did you get that? A baby lost 4 limbs. A baby lost both arms and both legs. What possible future could this child have in Gaza, even if Israel's war ended today? Those words should haunt us. A baby lost 4 limbs. But there's more. After lying and demonizing UNRWA, Israel's now systematically attacking its facilities.
Yes, UNRWA, their headquarters were hit. UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini wrote today, 4 schools hit in the last 4 days. Since the war began, 2/3 of UNRWA schools in Gaza have been hit. Some were bombed out, many severely damaged. Schools have gone from safe places of education and hope for children to overcrowded shelters and often ending up a place of death and misery.
Haaretz reports that the Israeli military used the Hannibal Directive multiple times on October 7th, killing their own soldiers rather than having them taken captive and brought into Gaza. This was noticed by the Palestinians right on that date, but is only now allowed by Israeli military censors into Israeli papers. And this news, that famous temporary pier for Gaza, built at a cost of $232 million, which broke apart several times, is not going to be rebuilt. $232 million plus all the millions on repairs and security. $232 million that achieved nothing at all when Biden could simply have ordered the Israelis to allow in the hundreds of aid trucks awaiting in Egypt. $232 million. In the old days, the politicians would thunder against this huge boondoggle. The media would highlight it. But the temporary pier to Gaza has sunk without much notice. I wrote a book in 2019 called Zionist Betrayal of Jews, the long story of Zionist alliances with far-right anti-Semitic forces. I've updated the book with more examples of how Israeli leaders betrayed Jewish interests, and I made a new slideshow about the continuing outrageous scandal. I'll be showing the slideshow at the Danbury Public Library at the end of this month, July 31st to be exact. We'll start at around 6 p.m. It's a free event, and you're all invited. New Britain is a small city in Connecticut south of Hartford. Their Common Council allows anyone to speak during the public participation section at the start of their council meetings. And on July 19th, a good number of people talked about New Britain to come up with a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza.
My name is Patrick Thompson. Today, New Britain has the opportunity to make a pivotal decision to demand ceasefire for an end to this genocide. People like to see themselves as their own protagonists in history. People like to think, in moments of extreme crisis and the horrors of the world can bring to us, we would like to be the resistance, the voice of reason, the voice demanding for peace and justice.
I'm Shelley Altman. I'm a member leader of Jewish Voice for Peace here in Connecticut. Prior to the devastation of Gaza, the U.S. had committed $3.8 billion a year for 10 years in military aid to Israel. In April, the U.S. committed an additional $14 billion to continue the assault on Gaza. The unrelenting attack on Gaza has gone on now for just over 9 months. Our government has been financing the killing of children and their families for the entire length of a full-term pregnancy.
Hi everyone, Jacob Pudlin, 407 Monroe Street, here in New Britain. I want to speak as well about the potential Gaza ceasefire resolution that I'd heard about from some local activists. In particular because I am one of only a handful of Jewish residents in our city, and I wanted to ask something of you that when I heard about this resolution felt important. Please do me and other Jewish residents of New Britain the honor of not making your decision in our name. Across our nation and beyond, the subject of the ongoing horrors against the Gazan people is derailed as people in positions of power, like yourselves, show performative concern over how Jewish people feel and hypothetical or imagined anti-Semitism in political statements. If the vote occurs, and if any of you wish to vote against a ceasefire, say why you are in favor of the violence continuing, but do not patronize the Jewish community and pretend to have our interests at heart. Jewish people are not a monolith. We are not inherently enemies of Palestinian liberation or inherently in support of Israel's actions. And it is in fact my Jewish upbringing that informs my stance that there is no political or ethical reason to kill tens, if not hundreds, of thousands of innocent people, many of whom are children. I would also like to note that in discussions on this throughout the last 9 months, one thing that I heard after another city council voted on a ceasefire resolution was someone being critical of it by saying, well, how many cities haven't voted for a ceasefire? And while I don't know how important that argument is, I think it's worth note that there are people out there who see your silence on this as complicity. There are people who will use any lack of discussion on the topic as evidence of endorsement. So if you believe that that is fine, go ahead, but I think you should say something so that you can choose your position rather than having it chosen for you.
Several people talked about flooding problems in New Britain.
It makes me angry because I've had to give up a third of my house because I can't trust that there's not going to be sewer water in the basement. The thing I want to leave you guys with tonight is I want you to go home tonight and just think about giving up one room of your house for a year. What would you do with all that stuff? Where would you put it? Would you throw it out? Would you pay for storage? What would you do? Would it make your life better, worse? I don't know. Thank you for your time.
It's ironic that New Britain needs funds to fix problems while the U.S. is pouring billions down the endless Israeli drain. And this was noted by the next speaker.
Good evening, Kylie Harrington. I may not be from New Britain anymore, but I grew up here, and I am here to request that you support the ceasefire resolution that has been put forward. I am here as a Jew and as a part of the Hartford Jewish Organizing Collective. There is currently a genocide happening in Gaza as we sit here, cooled by air conditioning, with a library at a hospital and basically walking distance that are functional. That is a privilege that people in Gaza do not have. Those people in Gaza that have not yet been murdered by Israel. As Shelley mentioned, the money that is being sent to Israel is coming directly from Connecticut, funds that cities in Connecticut, especially New Britain, could use. We just heard from 2 of your residents today who are having issues with their homes with flooding, that I know that I've seen many more roads flooded and ruined in the past couple of years due to the changing climate. Fixing that is not going to be cheap, and it's not going to be easy. But instead of spending money on fixing our roads and helping our people, America is sending money to Israel for them to destroy roads and murder people.
Hi, my name is Lily Mercado, and I've lived in New Britain all my life. I'm here today to ask the City Council to put forward and pass a resolution calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Palestine. I want to make it very clear what our intentions are. We all know that a symbolic resolution alone will not reverse nor stop the ongoing generations-long occupation of Palestine. Our country is actively assisting in genocide and brutal violence, but while these atrocities are committed on the global scale, this is very much still a local issue. An end to the brutal occupation of Palestine is in the best interest of New Britain residents, whether Muslim, Jewish, Arab, Palestinian, other marginalized groups, or everyone in this city whose tax money is better used on essential services than bombing children.
I am a Jewish resident of New Britain. Over 38,000 Palestinians have been killed since the start of this genocide. According to the British Medical Journal, 186,000 have been killed through indirect deaths. And this is with the help of US weapons and also Connecticut. And as we've heard earlier, this money could be better spent on all kinds of human services programs, education, on the maintenance of roads and properties. There's a lot of money going to kill people that could be funding human needs. UN experts have declared that Israel's targeted campaign has led to famine and genocide. Over 1 million Palestinians have been displaced. They have had to move many, many times. Imagine the trauma for the children of having to move all these times. I as a child had to move, but I wasn't dealing with war on top of it and having my family killed and not knowing if I would be alive tomorrow, which is what the Palestinians are dealing with. Myself, my neighbors, and my friends have been very depressed over the death and destruction in Gaza. My neighbors of the same address, William Shannon and John Wyron, also support a ceasefire resolution in Gaza. William Shannon would have been here tonight, but he's out of town working, out of the state working. When you eat, think of all in Gaza who can't. As you relax at home tonight, think of all the Palestinians who are in their homes not knowing if they will be alive tomorrow.
Hi, my name is Hilary DeSideraggio. Members of the City Council, I am one of your constituents, and I'm here to request that you consider a resolution in support of a ceasefire in Gaza. Although largely a symbolic gesture, it would put our city on the right side of history, declaring what is currently going on as the catastrophe that it is. Every day for the past 9 months, I have thought about the lives being lost in the genocide in Gaza. Some may say that it is not a local issue, but the weight of this catastrophe weighs on myself and many others to the point where it's difficult to be a productive member of society. Sometimes I have to stop myself with what I am doing at work to excuse myself and cry because I think about all the lives lost, all the children that will never reach their potential, that will never again have the ability to laugh and play, as any child should have the right to do. I also think a lot about the mothers of Gaza. According to an NPR article published at the end of March, which means the number has changed since, about 20,000 babies have been born in Gaza since October 7th. That is 20,000 mothers who have had to give birth without a real hospital, who've had to bring life into a world of death. The precedent has been set before for a municipality in Connecticut to pass a resolution on an international issue, as Hartford was one of the first cities to pass a resolution condemning apartheid in South Africa. And multiple cities in Connecticut have already passed the ceasefire resolutions, such as Bridgeport and Windsor. We should follow their lead and pass a ceasefire resolution in New Britain and show where our values are. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jillian Davey. I'm a Jewish person and a member of the Hartford Jewish Organizing Collective, a group of Greater Hartford Jews who are committed to the liberation of all people, including Jews and Palestinians. As a Jewish person, opposing genocide and standing against oppression is core to my identity and my faith. Judaism is and has always been rooted in tikkun olam, preparing the world and above all valuing and working to save human lives. You've heard from many other Jews of conscience about how genocide is wrong and how there is nothing that could ever possibly justify committing a genocide. So let's be clear. Israel is committing genocide and has been committing a genocide against Palestinians for decades. Neither this occupation nor this genocide started on October 7th, and anyone who says it did is either grossly misinformed or willfully lying because it feeds their narrative, which fuels Palestinian persecution and death. There are no two sides to this story. Neutrality is no longer an option, and not taking a side or refusing to vote in favor of the ceasefire resolution is unequivocally taking a side. I would just like to end and say that New Britain City Council, please have morality. Please take a stand against genocide, and please pass a ceasefire resolution tonight. I would also like to take this time to once again demand that this City Council and Mayor Aaron Stewart stop protecting killer cops and fire Connor Wrench. Justice for Catherine Cologne, Free Palestine.
All right, my name is Carly Webb. I live here in New Britain, and I'm celebrating my 26th year living here.
Thank you.
And this is a good town, but I'm asking this good town a question. If this is a question, do we stand up for human rights or don't we? And the answer to that question, you have to look at the account balance that's in your heart and souls. And the ceasefire resolution here is really a matter of solvency and bankruptcy. Do we stand for our greater values as a city, as a community, or don't we? Now, how you decide is going to send me a message on how you will govern me as a citizen. See, Gaza is not a place on the news. It's also a test of who we are. As a citizen of this town, I'd like to believe that we do stand for the best who we are as a people. I'd like to believe that we're not morally bankrupt. And if you move forward on a ceasefire resolution, if you support it, you're going to send a clear message that will spread across this state and across this country. But if you retreat, you're going to send another message that the account of human and humane values in this community is empty. And I'll tell you that moral bankruptcy will also engage in material bankruptcy. Because right now in this state and in this city, we have a housing crisis. We are getting news of cuts in education from Washington and Hartford, and make no mistake, those will hit us here in New Britain. In part because my taxes, your taxes, our taxes, are going to fund this continuing genocide. And this affects people like me who live in communities like ours. I want you to imagine here again, Gaza's not someplace on your nightly news. Gaza's right up the street. Hospitals there being flattened. Now imagine if that's Central Connecticut. Universities and schools are being flattened. Now imagine if that university had flattened with CCSU, which is right down the street, or New Britain High, or Chamberlain Elementary, which is in my neighborhood. Even though they're going to be flattened by the shortfall coming from Washington and Hartford, because that money's kind of tied up right now. Most of it's going to the Israeli Defense Forces. Someone up here came up and talked about sewers and streets. I live in this community, and I know when the sewers got backed up, I got affected, we all got affected. I don't want my sewers fixed. I want streets fixed. I want infrastructure. I want those things in my community, but those things are not going to be funded if my tax money keeps getting sent to destroy sewers and streets in Gaza when we need them to fix sewers and streets here in New Britain. So I ask you, I urge you, choose solvency. Choose human and humane values. Support a ceasefire resolution and send the message that we in New Britain do not support this genocide and we can't fund it.
My name is Stanley Heller. I live in Danbury, though I've come to New Britain many times to attend lectures at Central and sometimes to give them. I'm a member of Jewish Voice for Peace. I've been active on this issue of Palestine and Israel for over 40 years. I want to point out that it's really common for municipal bodies to take issues or to make resolutions on all kinds of issues. It happened during Vietnam, it happened during Iraq, in Poland, during the Soviet tyranny over that country, and so forth. I want to tell you about one person I know. I know several people in Gaza, not a lot, but a few. I've worked with a man named Anas Arafat. No idea if he has any relation to the famous Arafat. He was working on trying to get food sufficiency for Gaza City. And he's a lawyer by training, but there's just not that kind of work there. So he's doing this kind of work. When the warfare started after the terrorist attack, after the terrible atrocities, and also the military attacks against a suffocating siege of Gaza. After all that, he knew he better get his family out. So he moved to another part of Gaza City, and they bombed the heck out of his house, as he thought. And what followed was month after month of him moving from place to place. He has diabetes. He's a young man. He's, I think, 30 at the most. But because insulin is very expensive, sometimes you can't get it, he's had a lot of problems. We did fundraising. We sent him to Egypt. It cost thousands of dollars to get eye treatment. Well, to make a long story short, he has not had any insulin in 9 months now. And all the good things that were done with the medical treatment are gone. When his wife had to give birth in January, he had to do it by himself with aid from a doctor over a cell phone. Last week, he wrote back that, I think this might be it. The bombs are coming right near us in Gaza City. But luckily, I guess, he did not die. But the Israelis then told everyone to leave Gaza City, something like 300,000 people just a couple days ago. They're going to do it by military force. And so he left whatever he was living in. And he says, now we are sleeping on the street. Thank you for listening. Please support a ceasefire resolution. End this war.
Thank you, Stan.
Hello, my name is Sol Braxton. I'm here to speak on the resolution about Gaza and the ceasefire. I think that when I speak about this here today, there's a lot of questions about how is this a New Britain issue. The United States is a representative democracy. I've organized at my school when I was in college. I've organized at the Capitol in Hartford, and now I'm here in New Britain. This affects us on every level, and if I cannot come here today and speak to you and have there be change, our government has failed. It is your job as New Britain members to pressure our state government, and it is the job of our state government to pressure our United States government, and that's why I'm here. Gaza is a very material issue for us here in New Britain. As people have spoken, there are millions of tax dollars leaving New Britain, leaving my own home to go and kill people across the world. And I don't think that's good for anyone. I'm no idiot to economics. I know that in the past 50 years, federal funding of states has shrunk. I know that tax rates have affected the building permits and things like that. I know that the pandemic has done generational damage to livelihoods, to economics, and yet every dollar matters. And in the same way that every dollar matters, every life matters. If a child was killed right here in New Britain by a bomb from a country across the world, we would sound the alarm and we would be on this issue. And yet, all we hear is silence from a lot of our local government members. And so I'm here to support the resolution, and I hope that you all can not only do your own research on it, but see it too in your hearts to protect children that if they were your own, you would seek to protect. Thank you.
In New Britain, the rules of the Common Council allow members to respond to comments from the public. Several council members were sympathetic to the idea of a ceasefire resolution. I only have time to play some remarks made by Councilmember Nathan Simpson.
There are tens of thousands of people dead here. There are universities that have been destroyed. There have been hospitals that are leveled. This conflict is actually the deadliest for journalists compared to any other war, and this is including World War II. In 9 months, more journalists have been killed than all of World War II combined. And it was actually at an education session hosted by our wonderful cameraman here in conjunction with others that helped bring education on the Israel-Palestine issue to folks like me who, if you asked me a year ago, I would be clueless on the issue. There does seem to be a problem where politicians in the US and across Connecticut are still clueless, and given the heightened awareness of this issue, it is irresponsible to not know anything about what's going on. And with tens of thousands of dead, with infrastructure being completely eliminated, I dare us to find the good in any of that. And while this council doesn't have the ability to redirect federal funds that are going to nothing but bombs that are eviscerating communities across the world, what I can do in my capacity as a counselor and in my role as the chair of housing for the city is to recognize that when our federal delegates are allocating hundreds of billions of dollars to warfare, when the Department of Housing and Urban Development has released figures that say we can fix homelessness in all of the United States for a fifth of that money. As the chair of housing, I cannot sit here and just waft that away.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.